Welcome to Socials with the Saints. Are you looking for hope and inspiration? Grab a cup of tea or your favorite beverage and spend some time with us as we meet role models throughout church history and discuss how they can help us in our daily pilgrimage of life.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us. This is Socials with the Saints. Our mission is to inspire you in your daily pilgrimage of life by introducing you to the communion of saints. I'm Angela Ciolana, and I serve as media coordinator for Pilgrim Center of Hope, as well as a member of our speaker team. It's a pleasure to be with you all today. Pilgrim Center of Hope, a Catholic ministry founded in 1993 with a mission of helping you walk your journey of daily life in hope with Christ and the Church, is very excited to offer you Socials with the Saints. These are opportunities to learn from role models of faith and from one another for fellowship, prayer, and receiving spiritual tools. Today we will be shining a light on a very inspirational young person from Spain who actually is not a saint, but we learned about him and how his cause for canonization was opened in May of 2008, and we thought we wanted to shine a light on this young man. He is servant of God, Ismael de Tomelloso. We will be recording this podcast as a resource for those who could not attend our in-person Socials with the Saints gathering. You are most welcome to join us on the third Thursday of every month in San Antonio, Texas. Visit pilgrimcenterofhope.org. That's pilgrimcenterofhope.org for more information about our in-person Social with the Saints gatherings. Let's learn the story of Ismael de Tomelloso, who is also known as Ismael Molinero Novillo. He was born on the 1st of May, 1917 in Tomelloso, Spain. He died on the 5th of May, 1938. And as I mentioned earlier, his cause for canonization was opened May 2008. The son of Francisco Antonio Lázaro Molinero Román and Ángela María Francisca Novillo y López, Ismael was baptized on May 6, 1917. In all, 7 of his 10 siblings survived infancy, supported by Francisco's work as a blacksmith. They lived a simple life in the Spanish countryside. That summer, the nation entered what Spanish historians call the crisis of 1917, comprising 3 simultaneous challenges to the government through military, political, and social movements. That winter, the Spanish flu became the deadliest pandemic of its time. In 1923, a coup overthrew Parliament. Ismael entered school and was taught by the Daughters of Charity of St. Vincent de Paul and St. Louise de Marillac, the same order as St. Catherine Labouré, who had received the apparition of the Virgin Mary, which resulted in the creation of the Miraculous medal, with an image of the Virgin Mary standing on the globe, hands outstretched, wearing rings on her fingers. From some of these rings, rays of God's grace extend toward the earth. Ismael was a good Catholic school student, but not particularly devout. He was confirmed and received First Communion at the age of 8. When he was about 10, he accompanied his mother to the local home for the homeless elderly, where they served meals and visited with residents. Communist revolutions abroad inspired Spanish citizens to change their country in hopes of a better life for commoners. Many revolutionaries held sentiments similar to those who had undertaken the French Revolution, associating traditionalism with oppression. Protests flooded the streets, and the king turned rule over to the military. This paired with a perfect storm of economic depression. At the age of 14, Ismael was pulled out of school to help support his family by working in a dry goods store. Disconnected from his schoolmates, he began to associate with gangs of boys known for impropriety. His personality being lively and charismatic, he became popular at parties. His talents for guitar and bandurria, which is similar to a mandolin, singing and poetry, provided hearty entertainment for his new compatriots. Ismael grew disinterested in the dry goods store and moved to another job where he didn't last long either. Then, when the owners of a new fabric store heard that lively salesman Ismael was ready for hire, they took him on. Ismael, keeping up with all the fashion trends, frequently changed the store displays and offered clever discounts that kept merchandise moving. On January 6th, King's Day, he dressed up a 7-foot-tall gypsy nicknamed Varal as King Balthazar. Ismael outfitted him as a real magician and gave him a scroll to hold in his hands that read, "Write your letters to the Magi Kings and leave them in our Balthazar's mailbox." An enormous crowd visited the store and sales soared. The grateful owners gave Ismael a generous cash bonus. This idea was perhaps a precedent for the custom in large department stores in the West of having children write letters to the Magi or to Santa Claus at Christmas time. A boy a few years older than Ismael, named Miguel, who was a neighbor, invited Ismael to the newly erected Catholic Action Center in Tomelloso, making sure to note its regular poetry readings and musical sessions. Miguel gave Ismael a tour of the place with its library and game tables. He also introduced him to the center's priest advisor, Father Bernabe Huertas Molina. Well, Ismael was initially impressed and promised to visit. However, he began to make excuses that his Catholic education had been very limited. After a while, he compared his friends with the youth at the Catholic Action Center and changed his mind. Ismael started to see Father Bernabe for regular confession and spiritual direction. The advisor's later testimony about Ismael was, quote, "He communicated fire, a healthy restlessness, an anxiety for lofty ideals, and made us want to sacrifice ourselves," unquote. Slowly, Ismael's parents began to see a change in their son, from apathy to light and joy, as well as a dedication to others. His happiness came forth in poems which he gifted to the outcasts he encountered, the poor, the elderly, young children, lonely neighbors. He said, quote, "Since I don't know how to speak and I'm not very smart, I wouldn't be able to talk about good things or about religion. For this reason, I want to be a life example," unquote. On his frequent visits to the elderly, he played guitar and sang traditional Spanish dance songs, jotas, as well as performing poetry, skits, and organizing dances and theatrical plays. He particularly made it his mission to cheer up one old woman who always complained and hardly ate. He sat with her and joked, then playfully filled her spoon with food and helped her feed herself, as one would an infant. Each of the residents knew that Ismael loved them. On the way to work, he would spread this joy and often quietly paid a visit to Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament. Sometimes before the tabernacle, he would simply stop and gaze for a long time. He would often speak about how the Lord was all alone and began to visit the Holy Eucharist more frequently. In addition to daily morning and evening prayers, he often spent long times in silent prayer in the evenings, and he asked his friends for advice on how to practice bodily penances. In 1935, he participated in spiritual exercises at the seminary in Ciudad Real and grew fond of the priest who led the retreat as well as the seminarians. Soon, Ismael would find himself saying occasionally, "I'd like to be a priest." And by his example, many young men around him entered the seminary. Sadly, He knew that his family situation would lead them to reject any proposal of his living in religious or clerical life. This is particularly true given the social climate. After the 1931 elections had made evident the country's revolutionary ideals, the king had fled into hiding and the monarchy had been abolished. Catholic institutions were separated from the state, which led to many priests losing their salaries and churches closing due to lack of income. The Jesuits were expelled. The Prime Minister declared that Spain would no longer be a Catholic nation. Citizens began to burn churches and murder priests. Pro-military nationalists faced off against the Republican revolutionaries, and the Spanish Civil War began on July 18, 1936. Ismael and his friends attended secret mass until they were thrown in jail, only released after a hefty fine was paid. On July 26, the feast day of St. Anne, radicals burned the sacred art in Tomelloso's church. Ismael managed to save a piece of the ribbon from the pontifical flag that Catholic Action had brought from a pilgrimage to Rome. He was sent to jail and was released after Ismael's father pleaded with someone he knew who had good connections in the Republican system. However, danger drew nearer when radicals came to Francisco's shop, demanding his blacksmith tools. Ismael and his brother Luis were hiding, but Ismael emerged and pleaded with his father not to do it, knowing that their intention was to break into the church. After a heated argument, the radicals left, but not without threatening them. Francisco then sent the two boys to the lagoons of Ruidera, where they hid in a run-down farmhouse for at least a month and a half before returning home. Ismael's class of 1938 was drafted by the revolutionaries on September the 18th, 1937. He was transferred to Cuenca, where the anti-Catholic Revolutionary Republican Army converted the seminary into a barracks. He remained quiet and simple. Another transfer, and he was separated from his only friend. He knotted a frayed rope to use as a secret rosary. Finally, his company went to occupy Teruel, one of the harshest winter climates in Spain. Ismael not only suffered from the weather, but also was deeply affected by how the other soldiers cursed God. Sometimes they yelled at him, demanding that he also swear. He answered with silence. Finally, Ismael found himself in the middle of the Battle of Alhambra. According to eyewitnesses, he threw down his rifle as shells and soldiers flew past him, and he clutched his miraculous medal in prayer. The nationalists won fairly quickly, and they took Ismael as one of their prisoners of war. As the prisoners were processed, many exaggerated their past merits in hopes that they would be released. Ismael could have revealed his status as a member of Catholic Action, but he didn't, because he said, "I wanted to suffer for God, for souls, and for Spain." Pneumonia turned into tuberculosis. He lived on a hospital bed for the last several months of his life, where he was able to receive the sacraments for the first time in 2 years. He died making an act of trust in the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Wow, what a story. Here are a few questions to ponder. What struck you about what you just heard? And what stood out to you in the story? How does the life of this role model of faith teach and challenge you in your spiritual life? What lesson will you take with you into your daily life? Please leave a comment on the YouTube post that corresponds to this episode or the podcast app that you listen to this episode on. Or you can send us an email to ministry@pilgrimcenterofhope.org. We look forward to hearing what you have to say. You can download a printable pamphlet with this story, as well as a card with a quote from this month's Holy Role Model on our website, pilgrimcenterofhope.org. The link will be included in the podcast description. And that quote from Ismael de Tomelloso is, "How many would have been saints had they only run into other saints?" Ismael de Tomelloso, pray for us. We invite you to come visit Pilgrim Center of Hope and learn more about our threefold ministry of pilgrimages, conferences, and outreach. You can learn more at pilgrimcenterofhope.org. That's pilgrimcenterofhope.org, and see how you can support us or sponsor an upcoming Social with the Saints. You can also call us 210-521-3377. Please make sure to stay up to date with details about these wonderful events so that you can meet us and join us and follow along with all the hope we have to share. You can do so by liking our Pilgrim Center of Hope Facebook page, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our email list by visiting our website, pilgrimcenterofhope.org. Until next time, remember, we are a pilgrim people, and on your journey, you are never alone in the communion of saints. May God bless you.